Good morning all. Welcome to the civics class. In our previous class, we learned about right to freedom. Under that, we learned about so many different rights, and I hope everyone is clear about all that. Today, we are going to start with our right against exploitation. So let's begin our chapter. Once the right to liberty and equality is granted, it follows that every citizen has a right not to be exploited. Yet the constitution makers thought it was necessary to write down certain clear provisions to prevent exploitation of the weaker sections of the society. The constitution mentions three specific evils and declares these illegal. First, the constitution prohibits traffic in human beings. Traffic here means selling and buying of human beings, usually women, for immoral purposes. Second, our constitution also prohibits forced labor or begar in any form. Begar is a Hindi word. Begar is a practice where the workers is forced to render service to the master free of charge or at a nominal remuneration. Remuneration means wages or salary. When this practice takes place on a lifelong basis, it is called the practice of bonded labor. Finally, the Constitution also prohibits child labor. No one can employ a child below the age of 14 to work in any factory or mine or in any other hazardous work, such as railways and ports. Using this as a basis, many laws have been made to prohibit children from working in industries such as beedi making, firecrackers and matches, printing and dyeing. Right to freedom includes right to freedom of religion as well. In this case too, the constitution makers were very particular to state it clearly. Most people in India, like anywhere else in the world, follow different religions. Some may not believe in any religion. Secularism is based on the idea that the state is concerned only with relations among human beings and not with the relation between human beings and God. A secular state is one that does not establish any one religion as official religion. Indian secularism practices an attitude of a principled and equal distance from all religions. The state has to be neutral and impartial in dealing with all religions. Every person has a right to profess, practice, and propagate the religion he or she believes in. A right to propagate one's religion, however, does not mean that a person has right to compel another person to convert into his religion by means of force, fraud, inducement, or allurement. Of course, a person is free to change religion on his or her own will. Freedom to practice religion does not mean that a person can do whatever he wants in the name of religion. Religious practices which treat women as inferior or those that infringe women's freedom are not allowed. A secular state is one that does not confer any privilege or favor on any particular religion, nor does it punish or discriminate against people on the basis of religion they follow. Thus, the government cannot compel any person to pay any taxes for the promotion or maintenance of any particular religion or religious institution. There shall be no religious instruction in the government education institution. In educational institutions managed by private bodies, no person shall be compelled to take part in any religious instruction or to attend any religious worship. Our next right is cultural and educational rights. You might wonder why were the constitution makers were so particular in providing written guarantees of the rights of the minority. Why are there no special guarantees for the majority? Well, for the simple reason that the working of democracy gives power to the majority. It is the language, culture, and religion of minorities that needs to be protected. Otherwise, they may get neglected or undermined under the impact of the language, religion, and culture of the majority. The Constitution specifies the cultural and educational rights of the minority. Any section of citizens with a distinct language or culture have a right to conserve it. Admission to any educational institution maintained by government or receiving government aid cannot be denied to any citizen on the ground of religion or language. All minorities have the right to establish and administer education institutions of their choice. Here, minority does not mean only religious minority at the national level. In some places, people speaking a particular language are in majority. People speaking a different language are in a minority. For example, Telugu speaking people form a majority in Andhra Pradesh, but they are a minority in the neighboring state of Karnataka. Sikhs constitute a majority in Punjab, but they are minority in Rajasthan, Haryana, and Delhi. How can we secure these rights? If rights are like guarantees, they are of no use if there is no one to honor them. The fundamental rights in the Constitution are important because they are enforceable. We have a right to seek the enforcement of the above mentioned rights. This is called the right to constitutional remedies. This itself is a fundamental right. This right makes other rights effective. It is possible that sometimes our rights may be violated by fellow citizens, private bodies, or even by the government. When any of our rights are violated, we can seek remedy through courts. If it is a fundamental right, we can directly approach the Supreme Court or the High Court of a state. That is why Dr. Ambedkar called the right to constitutional remedies the heart and soul of our Constitution. In case of any violation of a fundamental right, the aggrieved person can go to a court for remedy. But now, any person can go to court against the violation of the fundamental right if it is of social or public interest. It is called public interest litigation or PIL. Under the PIL, any citizen or group of citizens can approach the Supreme Court or a High Court for the protection of public interest against a particular law or action of the government. One can write to the judges even on a postcard. The court may take up the matter if the judges find it in public interest. Now children, think and discuss with your parents. Can the President of India stop you from approaching the Supreme Court to secure your fundamental rights? Expanding scope of rights. You might think that fundamental rights granted by the Constitution are the only rights citizens have. This is not true. While fundamental rights are the source of all rights, our Constitution and law offers a wider range of rights. Over the years, the scope of rights has expanded. Sometimes it leads to expansion in the legal rights that the citizen can enjoy. From time to time, the courts have judgments to expand the scope of rights. Certain rights like right to freedom of press, right to information, and right to education are derived from the fundamental rights. As you all know, now school education has become a right for Indian citizens. The governments are responsible for providing free and compulsory education to all children up to the age of 14 years. Parliament has enacted a law giving the right to information to the citizens. This act was made under the fundamental right to freedom of thought and expression. We have a right to seek information from government offices. Recently, the Supreme Court has expanded the meaning of the right to life to include the right to food. Also, rights are not limited only to fundamental rights as enumerated in the Constitution. Constitution provides many more rights which may not be fundamental rights. For example, the right to property is not a fundamental right, but it is a constitutional right. Right to vote in elections is an important constitutional right. With the expansion of democracy all over the world, there is great pressure on governments to accept these claims. Some international covenants have also contributed to the expansion of rights. This international covenant recognizes many rights that are not directly a part of the fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution. This has not yet become an international treaty, but human rights all over the world see this as a standard of human rights. These include the right to work, means opportunity to everyone to earn livelihood by working. Right to safe working conditions means fair wages that can provide decent standard of living for workers and their families. Right to adequate standard of living including adequate food, clothing and housing. Right to social security and insurance. Right to health, that means medical care during illness, special care for women during childbirth and prevention of epidemics. Right to education means free and compulsory primary education, equal access to higher education. Thus, the scope of rights has been expanding and new rights are evolving over time. They are a result of the struggle of the people. New rights emerge as societies develop or as new constitutions are made. The Constitution of South Africa guarantees its citizens several kinds of new rights, like right to privacy, so that citizens or their home cannot be searched, their phones cannot be tapped, their communication cannot be opened. Right to an environment that is not harmful to their health or well-being, right to have access to adequate housing, right to have access to health care services, sufficient food and water. No one may be refused emergency medical treatment. Many people think that the right to work, right to health, right to minimum livelihood, and right to privacy should be made fundamental rights in India as well. What do you think?